Well, hello there. My name is HW, and thank you so much for watching Tone Junkie TV. My friends, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story of the Steel String Singer amp it's a clone, that we used to make the String Singer Kemper profile pack. And let me tell you how we got it. Let me tell you what it has to do with the mystery amp. Let me tell you about it because, well, why? Why? HW, why are you on here trying to tell us a story right now? I thought you were supposed to be educating us about the Kemper and making some cool profile packs. Yes, all that's going on still. But I've already been contacted by a couple of people about purchasing this amp. The amp probably will be up for sale at some point, but I've gotten even more questions about what the amp is, where it came from. Is it the mystery amp? It's not the mystery amp, but I will tell you what it has to do with the mystery amp and how the mystery amp plays into how we acquired this amp. First of all, it will be for sale most likely very soon as part of a new thing we're launching called Tone Junkie Vintage, where we're going to be doing a lot of content and a lot of backstory on vintage guitars and amps that are for sale as part of the Tone Junkie collection, and they will be coming up for sale, and I have a whole bunch of ideas around that. Stay tuned for Tone Junkie Vintage. What does any of it have to do with the mystery amp? Let me set the stage for you, but before I do, let me just tell you this. This story, I've learned about how this amp came into existence from the original owner of the String Singer pack, the String Singer amp, the Steel String Singer clone amp, the person who built it, and I was able to substantiate a lot of what they were saying via the internet and via message board posts, a website that's still up that catalogs some of the things that were happening in the story. And okay, what does it have to do with the mystery amp? Let me set the stage how I learned of the Steel String Singer amp that we have. It is not the mystery amp. It is not made by Dumble, and you may have seen that I mentioned it was a circuit trace of John Mayer's the amp that John Mayer currently owns, which is Steel String Singer number 2, which was not made for John, it was made for someone else. What does all this have to do with the mystery amp? Let me set the stage. Here I am in talks to buy the mystery amp. And those talks took a very strange turn. And so what I can tell you about the mystery amp is the most expensive amplifier I've ever purchased, that we've ever profiled. It's the most expensive, like by a lot. The owner, the way this amp even came to exist, is it a one-off? That's a question some people might have. Is it one of a kind? It might be. There are others made, but for it to exist in the way it exists and for it to have the history it had, there's only one of those. And it had to have gone through this very strange path to get to me in the way it did. So here I am talking to a middleman because I'm not in contact directly with the owner of the mystery amp. And I'm talking to this store that's in the middle who handles a lot of things for this owner of the mystery amp. And apparently the mystery amp owner is a very good customer. He buys a lot of things. He has a lot of guitars. And they help him out with a lot of things. They've sold him many things through the years. They maintain a lot of his collection, blah, blah, blah. What ended up happening was I was alerted to the amp. I approached and said, I'm very interested in this. I see that it's available. Talk to me about it. They educated me about the amp. I said, okay. I said, what's the price? They said, here's the price. I said, what will they take? They said, this is what they'll take. I came back with a very strong offer. Now, the reason I came back with a very strong offer was, one, I wanted it. Two, the world was ending about this time. You got to understand, this is taking place in April, okay? We had been inside for a couple weeks and the world was like ending, and I'm still in talks with them and it looks like I've got it. We're going to do this mystery amp and I make this very strong offer and they say, okay, we'll get right back to you. And I hear nothing. And I go back to them and I know what this means in a negotiation, by the way. You got to understand that if you have a price and someone comes even with a very strong offer, but it's lower, when you don't answer, You're leaving yourself, you're posturing strength. You're saying, I'm not even getting back to you with like a compromise in the middle. I'm just not getting back to you. I'm not saying no, even, because maybe I don't want to say no. I just want you to come back to me now. I have it for sale. You came at me with an offer. I want to wait for you to call me again. So it's a tactic. So I came back and I said, hey, what's going on? And they said, look, actually, I said, are you guys just waiting for me to come back with a better number or what's? And they said, look, here's the real situation. The owner actually wanted this really high amount, and we got him to let us say this amount. And you made a really strong offer, an offer that I told you on the phone it was going to work for. And they came at me and just said, honestly, it's not even about the money. He just might not want to sell. And he's being a little eccentric about all this. You see, the amp has a history that he bought it for, or he has kept it because of this history. And he's not really using it right now, but it's part of his collection, and he doesn't need the money. So it was kind of like, why is he even selling it? And it was kind of like he was just selling some stuff, and he started selling this one too. And then it was like, well, do I even really want to? And, you know, it seemed like he wasn't that enthusiastic about letting it go after they told him, well, it's not worth the money you're thinking, it's worth this much. And this guy gave a very good offer of just below that. And so I said, look, I can't come up anymore. And they said, look, it's really not an issue of you coming up. We're not trying to get you to come up anymore. It's really an issue of we're waiting on him. And I really apologize, that we're kind of dragging our feet here. It's really in his court, and he hasn't gotten back to us in a little while. So I said, can you reach out and can you tell him that he's got 48 hours to basically let me know? And they said, listen, we really don't want to do that. I said, what? They said, look, he's a really good customer, and I wouldn't normally do this, but we don't want to pressure him. You know, we've been doing business with him for a long, long time, and we just don't want to pressure him. You know, like, we just want to let him make a decision. We do a lot, and it's a long relationship. Okay, I understand. It seems like the guy's a little eccentric. I'm guessing at this point there may have been something in their past where maybe he has a little bit of a temper. I don't know. I don't know. But it was obvious to me that the person I was speaking to either didn't have the authority or didn't want to go to them and give them well, the buyer said this, and make it look like they were trying to pressure the sale either. So I said, look, it seems like this might be over. Let me know if something changes. At that point, you guys, I'm panicking because HW doesn't want to let you down. I don't want to let you down because I had already said there was a mystery amp. It looked like this deal was in the bag. They said, here's what it's listed for. Here's what they'll take. And I got right to that. Here's what they'll take number. And so I'm thinking this is in the bag. I know. HW, don't count your chicks before they hatch. Is that the saying? Don't. You know what I'm saying? Well, now I go, oh my. I told the world there was a mystery amp and it's falling apart. What am I going to do? So I take to the internet. I start typing, and I realize I need to find something that's really special and really amazing. And I need to get something that can take the place of the mystery amp. That I can pretend it was the mystery amp the whole time. Now, whether I probably would have told you the truth eventually, but I had already put out there promo code mystery amp, HW's crazy, all this stuff. We had raised the money for the mystery amp and it looked like it was secured, and we still had a long way to go. I had to get it here. We had to secure it and get it to us. And that was a whole deal. So basically at that point, I was searching. I found the Steel String Singer clone, and I thought, wow, this looks interesting. But the listing was it didn't have a ton of details. It just looked like The person posting it came off a little bit curt, to be honest with you. It said like the buyer fell through. You could tell there's some anger there about, but there wasn't like, what is this amp? What's inside? There wasn't a huge deal. So I got a hold of them and I said, look, I'm interested in the amp. Here I made them an offer. They said that's way too low. I said, okay, well, but you got to remember, this is the world's falling apart. And I'm trying to get a deal like everybody else. So I went to them and I said, can you tell me about this thing? This is a unique amplifier and it looks like, a steel string singer, but obviously it's not. And they said, okay, here's the story. And so here's the story as I understand it. The person it was made for owned an actual Dumble ODS. And he owned a very unique Dumble ODS. And it is a Dumble ODS that was made from a deluxe reverb. I don't know if it was a Silverface or Blackface deluxe reverb, but it's in a deluxe. It was built into a deluxe reverb chassis. And if you know anything about Dumbles, you know that a lot of Dumbles, especially some of the early stuff, were modifications of other amps. Now, that doesn't mean he just modified, a Bassman, or he modified a Marshall or something. Howard Alexander Dumble did do that, but most of the modified amps were, if it's a modified, bandmaster, it's what they call an ultraphonic. He had a modification called the ultraphonic kind of thing, and he could do that to different amps. But he began building. You see, the Dumbles are amps that Howard built and designed, but they're based on something else in this way. He usually took the power section of an existing amp and then modified that and then rebuilt the entire front end. So, for example, the ODS, the ODS, the back half of that amp, the power section, is basically a Bassman. That's not where the magic is in those amps. He also built his own cabinets. I mean, he would change them, but the point is, he could take a Bassman head and he could pull everything out, and he had the tube sockets and the power tube sockets, the transformers, and he had guts that he was going to then use to build the amp. Then he would completely rebuild everything with his own circuit. But the guy was just grabbing great old vintage amps going, these are great transformers, these are great tube sockets, these are great everything. And it's a great head, right? So he's taking the amps and doing that. Similarly, the Steel String Singer, the back half of it looks like an Ampeg bass amp that's been modified. So it looks like he grabbed transformers and stuff out of there. So, but he did all sorts of stuff. He grabbed PV transformers out of stuff. And he just looked for stuff that sounded good. So this particular amplifier that was owned by the original owner of the Steel String Singer, it is believed to be the only deluxe reverb one that was ever made, and it's the only 25 watt 6v6 one. Now, there's been some speculation of, could this amp have been fake or something? I don't know about any of that. All I know is this gentleman owned it. And that amp currently right now is for sale at Carter's Vintage. You can go look at it. There is also a demo of Hunter Hayes playing it on the Carter YouTube channel. Now that's the Dumble ODS that this gentleman owned. He then met someone who owned a company called Sabago Sound. And Sabago Sound, both those guys are in California, my old stomping grounds. They're in Northern California. And Sabago Sound was making amps, and they got together on a project, and they said, what would be cool? Sabago Sound's making their stuff, and this guy owns an ODS, and they said, do you know what would be really cool? Because people can't own Dumbles anymore, he doesn't really make them. What if we made, because we have this special 25 watt Dumble, maybe the only one ever made, ODS, let's make 25 replicas of them, and we'll sell them. And so Sabago Sound actually made 25 replicas where they went and they got all the lettering and stuff on the original Dumble. Correct. And they copied the controls and everything. And then they sold it and said basically, hey, we made a limited edition, 25 exact replicas of this real Dumble. It's a unique Dumble. We made 25 exact replicas. They're for sale. And they sold that. And it was actually because, I think they got the idea because there's actually a YouTube video of that amp. In an early YouTube days, it got very, very famous, got a lot of views. And it's just a camera mic and stuff. It doesn't sound particularly hi-fi, but it sounds good. So they made those, and it looks like the rest of the story, this is where it gets a little murky, but it looks like at that point the owner, he sold some of them on his own website that they created to sell these amps. And they also, some Sebago dealers, it looks like, were able to get a couple of them and sell them through their stores. At the time, I don't think there were many Sebago sound dealers. It's a relatively small company. But that's what they did. They made 25 of these. The next part of the story gets a little murky. I'm not really sure how this amp gets built in this sense. Then it looks like the original owner asked if a copy of a Steel String Singer could be made the same way. What I'm not sure about is, were they planning to then make clones of Steel String Singers and sell them? I'm not sure. They never did. I don't know if this was meant to be the prototype for that. But what I think happened was just the gentleman said, hey, I have a real ODS. I'd really love a Steel String Singer, but obviously since there's like 10 or 12 that exist, and John owns like 4 of them, I believe, at this point. He owns 2, I think 4 or 5, and something else, maybe 6, I don't know. John owns, it's rumored that John has, I think we know John has at least 2. It's rumored that he owns as many as 4, maybe he owns 5, I don't know. Hey, John, if you're out there, tell us how many Steel String Singers you own. But he owns number 2. Stevie Ray Vaughan owns number 1, or did own number 1 up until his death, at which point I think we believe Jimmy Vaughan has the amp. Or I don't know. We think Jimmy has the amp, and not a lot's known about that amp. What's generally understood is that Stevie modified all his stuff. It's unlikely that Stevie didn't change his Dumble around. Some people even say that Steel String Singer number 1 has a doubled power section from the 150 watts that it already had. So some people say it could have been doubled again to a 300 watt thing, which would be, I just have no idea. I mean, I just have no idea. Nobody really does until Jimmy lets it go, or until he passes in the collection, maybe goes up for auction or something. We don't know. The one we probably know the most about and have heard the most about, and probably the most recorded Steel String Singer, apart from, we believe number 1, Stevie's amp, is on Texas Flood with his ODS. That's not really totally substantiated though, is John Mayer's, and that's Steel String Singer number 2. Well, okay, how did the guy from Sebago Sound make a circuit traced copy of Steel String Singer number 2? Well, here is what I understand went on. It was told to me that a store in Japan called Full Moon Music became a Sebago amps dealer, the Sebago amps dealer in Japan, I think. And they had at one point had Steel String Singer number 2 in their shop. Okay, now when I look at the timeline, it appears that most likely was from before John owned the amp. So that would have been, I don't know when he acquired the amp, but I think they circuit traced it quite a while ago. So what's the current, state of that amp? I don't know. But all in all, this is a very accurate amp recreation of a Steel String Singer. Now, there are many Steel String Singers on the market. Now, there is something called the Sebago Sound Texas Flood. I don't know how that amp exactly compares to this, other than this has all the same controls as a Steel String Singer, an actual one. I believe the Texas Flood from Sebago Sounds has some slightly different controls, configuration. I don't know if they modernized it or what. The Silver Sterling from Two Rock, that also is an amp. Two Rock is kind of known to not really do exact copies. They kind of do Two Rock stuff with it. They have some other switches too, by the way, that they've done on the Custom Reverb Signature and on the Bloomfield, which the Bloomfield is probably my favorite Two Rock amp ever. they've got some different stuff that they've put on there that isn't on a steel string singer. Now the Silver Sterling, as I've heard it, is an amazing sounding amplifier, but it looks like they've made some tweaks, modernized some things maybe. Another one that's out there is Welligen, and they make one, and also there's another group, another person that makes one. But Wells gel stuff is really good. I'm not familiar with what's on the inside of this amp in any more intimate detail than that. It looks like now, here's the other thing I'll tell you. It was told to me that this amplifier has actual transformers made that are the same ones that were made for Dumble. The manufacturer couldn't say that, but he said these are them. These are the spec of that. Are they the exact spec? I don't know. Are they close? I think so. That was apparently conversations that went on when the amps were being built, and apparently Dumble had these transformers made from a manufacturer, and when they went to go make this amp, they were able to contact the same manufacturer and say, we need those transformers, and they said, we don't sell those, but I don't know what you're talking about. On the record, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't make those transformers. Here you go. So what does that mean? I mean, all that means is he said, she said. I would invite you to listen to those demos, and I'll just tell you firsthand experience. This is one of the most incredible sounding clean amplifiers I've ever run into. The reverb is tremendous. It has the send and receive or send and return reverb controls, so they're both controlling how much signal is sent and returned, whether that return signal is amplified up or whether more is sent to the verb. And it has a beautiful haunting reverb. It is just a miraculous amp to play. Now the cabinet and the suede were all chosen to sort of let people sort of think it was real, you know what I mean? I mean, it's kind of in the fashion of a steel string singer, So the suede is there because it apparently there were some that were done in suede. I believe Henry Kaiser's was done in suede. I'm not sure, but and the 15-inch Altec speaker is what's in the cabinet now. Now that was chosen because Stevie used 15-inch speakers. Now he used JBLs. 15-inch JBLs, I believe. This is an Alnico Altec 15-inch speaker. The way it sits now, if you crank this amp, I can't understand how that's possible. This thing is so flippin' loud. Like, seriously, so flippin' loud. It can be so clean. You heard the levels of gain you could get. Even with the FET gain, you really got to ride it way up to get gain. Most of the gained up profiles in there, in the pack, were of pedals. That's where I'm drinking a root beer. And most of the pedals in there really were providing the dirt, and a lot of those pedals were meant to be very John-inspired. But all that to say, I bought this amp, really, because I was trying desperately to find something that could take the place of the mystery amp. So in a way, we ended up getting like two mystery amps. This could have been both mystery. I mean, they both could have been mystery amps. But there is still a mystery amp. If you're interested in purchasing the amp, contact me or something. I'll get back to the people who did contact me. There's going to be some announcements about it. I don't know what I'm going to sell for. I don't know when I'm going to sell it. I ended up paying a pretty penny for the amp. It is a beautiful recreation. Look, I'm not sure that you can, if looks are important to you, someone went through a lot of detail, a lot of work to get the typeface right on the front and back. You'll see a really thorough video and a bunch of photos and everything of this amplifier. It's in really great condition. What speakers you prefer it with is really up to you. I think it sounds wonderful with some G1265s. It also sounded great with EVs. That's like a very popular choice for this amplifier. The 15-inch Alnico is great, and as it sits right now in that cabinet, it gives you a little bit of Alnico touch on there and a real depth in the bottom end that you feel from that 15. But two Celestion 65s, G1265s, or two EVs are just as good a choice. So this cabinet probably could be be modified to fit 212. I don't see a problem with that. It's a very large. They're very large. They're wide, large, heavy pieces. You would just have to replace the baffle board, and that could be cool to have a 15 and a 212 baffle board. Heck, what would be really awesome if I might even see if I can contact the gentleman at Sabago and see, you got any more of this material? Can you make me a 212 cabinet to go with this? And then it'll have a 212 and a 115. In fact, that's what I'll do. I'll do that, and we'll see if we can make that available. I'm not sure, though. Probably not. But man, it's just... it's an incredible sounding amp, and I was really privileged to get it. And look, I think the real ones, are in the $200,000 range. They have Howard's Magic in them. I don't know if that's magic or not. I really have no idea. I've never played a real one. But, my understanding is this amp was made for Stevie, and the ODS was made for Robin Ford. And Dumble's just a guy who could listen to players and go, I know what you need. And I know how that relates to amp technology and how that relates to tone and what I need to do to a circuit to get you what you need. So I'm really I don't want to let the amp go, but I think we're going to have to. I can't tie up all my money in great amps and afford to get amps for the future. So in an effort to profile the world, yeah, this is probably going to be one of the lead pieces that goes out there with Tone Junkie Vintage, and we'll do a lot more content on this product, on this amp. But that's the story of the String Singer. It is a story that starts with somebody owning a real Dumble and wanting to have the others, but the others aren't available. The Steel String Singer as opposed to an ODS. But at one point, one of them had landed in Japan, and the shop was smart enough to circuit trace them, and then that shop became the distributor for a company that was very interested in making those amplifiers, and they were able to obtain the circuit trace and understand here's what is inside Steel String Singer number 2, and that's really cool. And they are recreating them, or they recreated this one, and it was made for the owner. And I don't know if they're ever going to make one again. I don't know. Or I bet the Texas flood is pretty close, but it looks like maybe, I don't know, just layout changes. I really don't know. I don't know how they compare. So, but this one is one of a kind, I believe, and really unique. Unique because it looks like the thing. It's as much a clone on the outside as it is on the inside. So, my guys, that's the story. I'm very excited about the mystery amp. I'm super excited about it, and I hope that we're able to, judge me on this. Judge me on the mystery amp. If I am not able to make the greatest profile pack we all have ever laid our hands on, because I think this amp can do it. I think the amp deserves it. And I'm going places I've never been before. We're going to get into it. First we gotta get further into why a mystery amp and what I'm trying to achieve, and then how we're profile. I've already begun to do some tests. I haven't begun the final profiles, but we're working on it. The amp's going to come out in about 2 or 3 weeks. The mystery amp's going to be out. We're going to release some IRs. But before that, I'm going on vacation. This weekend, HW's on vacation. There'll be some sales on the site. But and then we're gonna drop some fat IRs on your head. Then we're gonna go full on mystery amp. We might have a free thing in there before that for Tone Junkie's birthday. That's become our fashion. But the mystery amp will be revealed very soon. Very, very soon, like in the next couple weeks. Mystery amp is going to be very soon. We're going to get into a lot more about how it is, why it is, and what it is. And this one, although not the mystery amp, the Steel String Singer, it almost was the mystery amp. So, I guess we can add that to the story. It almost was. My name's Ben HW. Thank you so much for watching Tone Junkie TV. Stay tuned, guys. A lot of good stuff coming up. HW, out.